Chapter 621 Mubai and Zhuqing. Nobody knew what their destination was, but they disappeared into the air in that moment. Rong Niabing came before Hua Yuao, and gradually placed the crown in his hands on Hua Yuao's head. The seven emotions flickered in Hua Yuao's eyes, and everything finally returned to peace and tranquility as a glossy luster appeared on his body. The crown fused into Hua Yuao, and the seven emotions receded at the same time. Suddenly, an indescribable light erupted from Hua Yuao's body as his six great spirits glimmered into view one after another. The Sky Dream Ice Worm, the Ice Empress, the Snow Empress, the Star Anna's mysterious ice grass, the Ice Bear King, and the Mermaid Princess appeared one after another behind him. The seven emotions were immediately divided. The Snow Empress inherited the emotion of sorrow, the Ice Empress inherited the emotion of anger, the Star Anna's mysterious ice grass inherited the emotion of happiness, and the Ice Bear King inherited the emotion of bliss. The Mermaid Princess, Liya, inherited evil, while the Sky Dream Ice Worm's entire body was covered with a layer of radiant golden light, and that allowed Hua Yuao to experience drastic transformations. The 1 million-year soul beast who now had a future had inherited the power of love. Hua Yuao's six spirits had each inherited an emotion. Rong Niabing's eyebrows lowered. There's one left. Hate. Are you going to inherit the power of hate by yourself? The vertical eye on Hua Yuao's forehead gradually opened in this moment, and a black beam of light surged out from within it. There was something hovering in front of him, and this thing had an aura of hate that immediately swelled. Wasn't the entity that inherited the seventh and final emotion the Evil Eye Tyrant King? The Evil Eye Tyrant King wasn't one of Hua Yuao's spirits, but his degree of fusion with Hua Yuao wasn't inferior to any of Hua Yuao's spirits. The Evil Emperor seemed to understand some things as he sensed his surroundings, and the intense hatred gradually receded as he finally transformed into a minimized version of himself and floated next to Hua Yuao. The Evil Eye Tyrant King was still emanating hate, but there was only calmness deep within his eyes. Good. Rong Niabing nodded in Hua Yuao's direction. A powerful beam of white light erupted from his body and swept up Hua Yuao and himself. Hua Yuao and his seven spirits closed their eyes at the same time. Seven emotions flowed continuously, and everything about them was transforming and sublimating. An unknown period of time passed, and when Hua Yuao reopened his eyes, his seven great spirits were gone. He realized to his surprise that he was standing on a small mountain, but there were only clouds and mist around this tiny mountain. The clouds rolled through the air, and all kinds of dense elements permeated the air as they rippled and undulated mystically. Hua Yuao looked down at himself as his emotions changed. Nothing seemed to have changed, but there seemed to be something else in his mind. The clouds around were suddenly painted with gentle golden colors that gave off a strange but unique quality. Several figures gradually emerged from the clouds and flew in Hua Yuao's direction. They were all good-looking and wearing yellow, unassuming clothes. They took but the time needed for a few breaths to appear in front of Hua Yuao. There were 12 people, and they all bent down and greeted Hua Yuao respectfully. The man in the lead opened his mouth. Greetings, God of Emotion. You are? Hua Yuao asked confusedly. The man replied, we are the God Realm's God officers. You are new to the God Realm, and we are here to guide you to the God King and the Enforcer. Hua Yuao nodded and said, thank you. He would follow along since he was here. Hua Yuao could still remember Rong Niabing's words, that his father-in-law was the Tang Sect's ancestor, the God Realm's Enforcer. The God officers made a gesture to invite him forward, and the man in front took the lead, while the other God officers separated to both sides. Their expressions were very reverent and respectful. Hua Yuao's body floated forward on a whim. Everything seemed different after he became a god, and his spiritual power and soul power had both transformed drastically. Hua Yuao's spiritual sea was filled with strange golden colors, and its quality seemed to belong to another realm. Hua Yuao could make anything happen as long as he willed it. This made Hua Yuao think of his teacher, Electrolux's spectral demiplane. Hua Yuao's spiritual power was like an entirely different plane, and it felt like a true plane rather than a demiplane. Hua Yuao was the dictator over everything in that place. Perhaps that was what it felt like to be a true god. Hua Yuao's spiritual sea should be known as his godly sea, and the golden soul power flowing within his body should also be known as his god power. Hua Yuao's god power could change elements according to his thoughts, and he could control all the elemental ripples and undulations within the god realm. Of course, his elemental transformations were limited to those that he originally possessed, but his elements were no longer distinct, and they were purer. Furthermore, he could switch between them on a whim, and very swiftly. Light and mist separated as the scenes before his eyes changed continuously, and Hua Yuao released his consciousness amid his variegated surroundings. Hua Yuao realized to his surprise that the god realm didn't seem to transcend human boundaries. There was still land, mountains, and rivers. However, there was dense vital energy of heaven and earth in every corner, and its volume was at least several hundred times that of the Douluo continent. Even breathing in this place would improve one's cultivation more than cultivating and meditating down on the Douluo continent. However, there seemed to be some kind of strange unique force in the nether restricting something in this peculiar world. Hua Yuao had to slowly sense and figure out all these things in the future. Rong Niabing's introduction was only foundational after all, and there were so many more mystical and magical things in the vast god realm. Hua Yuao flew for an unknown period of time when the area before him glowed, and the golden colors around him grew denser. Gentle light resembled a mother's hand that caressed the cloud's delicate skin, and the illusory space gave off a peculiarly touching concreteness. There appeared to a majestic hall somewhere in the distance, and it appeared both illusory and real against the candlelight. A single figure stood quietly among the clouds, gazing across the boundless horizons. Nobody knew what he was looking at. This person had long blue hair that resembled a waterfall that fell all the way to his feet. If he didn't have an upright and tall stature and broad shoulders, one would probably think this person was a lady by looking at his back. Water seemed to ripple on his luxurious blue robe, and upon closer inspection, one's eyes would be immediately drawn by the deep blue hues, like one's spirit would be sucked into those blue colors that were vast, profound, and endless like the great oceans. This man looked but a little more than 20, and he had handsome features along with a pair of deep and profound eyes. His eyes seemed empty, yet also seemed to contain every single cosmological phenomenon in existence. Purplish hues flickered by from time to time, which was even more touching and alluring. There was a quality of youth and wonder in one moment, and the vicissitudes of life and death in the next. The god officers guided Hua Yuao before this man and stopped. They bowed respectfully and said, God of the sea. Yes. The blue-haired youth turned around and looked at Hua Yuao. His originally calm eyes suddenly turned cold. The god officers retreated quietly and gave them space. The blue-haired youth appeared even more intimidating and dignified from the last time they had met. Hua Yuao could particularly feel the pressure from his aloofness, and it stifled him until his breathing became irregular. Greetings, God of the sea. Hua Yuao didn't really know how to address him. He was afraid to anger this man by addressing him as his father-in-law, but he couldn't address him by his name, either. Hua Yuao could only follow how the god officers had addressed him. Tang Xan scrutinized Hua Yuao, who was both a little uneasy and anxious. He asked plainly, you've inherited Rong Niabing's godly seat. From today onward, you're a member of the god realm. There are many rules in the god realm, and the god officers will guide you in the future. You will have some land within the god realm. The two god kings and the other two enforcers are cultivating on their own, but you will have a chance to see them during the assembly of the gods. As long as you adhere to the god realm's rules, the god realm's council members will not interfere with anything else you do. Tang Xan growled, come. A shadow swiftly appeared beside Tang Xan. This person was clad in a long golden robe, and his godly power undulations were conspicuously stronger than the god officers who had come before. Enforcer, sir. Tang Xan waved his hand and said, take the new god of emotions to his residence. Yes. The golden-robed god officer answered respectfully. Tang Xan glanced coldly at Hua Yuao before he turned to fly towards the great hall in the distance. Hua Yuao was terrified as he hurriedly exclaimed, please wait, god of the sea. Hua Yuao's most important goal in coming to the god realm was to find Tang Wutong. He had finally met with his father-in-law, but how was he to find her again in the unfamiliar god realm if his father-in-law was leaving? Tang Xan paused. He didn't even turn back as he asked, what else do you want? Hua Yuao clenched his fists. He struggled to hold on before Tang Xan's overbearing pressure as he said, please let me see Wutong. I wish to explain things to her. Nonsense. Tang Xan suddenly roared as he spun around. Fury radiated from his face as he retorted, have you not harmed my daughter enough? She has suffered so much in the lower world because she became acquainted with you, and you still wish to see her? Hua Yuao answered shamelessly, yes, everything is my fault, but I just want to see her. Can you give me a chance? Tang Xan laughed coldly and glanced at the golden-robed god officer beside him. The god officer understood his meaning, and drifted away discreetly as he disappeared with a golden flash. You wish to see her? Yes, you may. Tang Xan lowered his voice as he spoke. Hua Yuao's heart skipped with joy. However, his joyous mood immediately sunk when he saw Tang Xan's expression. Indeed, Tang Xan continued, you can see her if you can defeat me. Hua Yuao was momentarily stunned. Defeat him? Defeat the God Realm's strongest enforcer. Defeat Tang Xan, who even Rong Niambing, whose god seat I have inherited, has admitted that he's inferior to. Defeat this formidable individual who became a god 10,000 years ago. I have to defeat my future father-in-law. How? How is that possible? How can I fight you? Who are you? Added a little breathlessly. Tang Xan smiled plainly and said, then you can leave. Who are you? Forced to laugh. You're the Tang Sect's ancestor, and you're the God Realm's enforcer. How can I fight you? And how can I defeat you? Tang Xan grunted coldly and retorted, right now, I'm not an enforcer, and I'm not the Tang Sect's founder. I'm the father of a daughter who's been bullied and treated unfairly. You've told Wutong so many times before that you'll protect her and defend her, that you wouldn't let her come to even a little bit of harm. But have you done that? You have hurt her again and again, and you've sent her down an abyss of pain and agony. You already have a child, so why are you still trying to stick to my daughter? It's not like that. Listen to me, God of the Sea. Who are you? Answered worriedly. I had no idea about that child. I'm not pushing my responsibility away, but I'm not even sure how that happened. I'm still a virgin. Who are you? Face flashed red and white when he said virgin. An amused smile flickered across Tang Xan's face, but who are you? Couldn't see that because he was blocked by the illusory mists before him. Tang Xan's voice was still ice cold. Whatever you say to me is useless. You have only one choice if you wish to see Wutong. You have to defeat me. Tang Xan waved his large hand as he spoke, and blasted a forceful airflow that pushed Who are you? Several hundred meters away. Wutong, I'm here. It's me. Who are you? Where are you? Where are you? Who are you? Shouted at the top of his lungs directly at the great hall in the distance. Shut up. Tang Xan lowered his voice as he growled. The environment suddenly changed drastically. The mountains, rivers, and paradise disappeared as a dense forest replaced everything, while Who are you? Surroundings turned green. Who are you? Stopped shouting as he stared at his surroundings in astonishment. Why did everything around him seem to familiar, like he had returned to the great Stardow forest? An unspeakably terrifying murderousness suddenly pounced right at him, a murderousness so thick and vigorous that it almost seemed material. Who are you? Followed his instincts and glanced into the distance, where he fearfully witnessed a figure slowly pacing toward him. Is that still the Tang Sect's ancestor? In this moment, Tang Xan was no longer the god who was filled with spirituality and magic from before. Tang Xan's long hair and luxurious robe had become blood red. What was even more frightening was the fact that the dense forest behind him also turned red as he walked. Dense murderousness rushed continuously in Who are you? Direction almost like it was material, and all the plants around him gradually withered before the vigorous murderousness. The forest behind Tang Xan had become an ocean of blood, and Who are you? Seemed to hear countless vengeful spirits crying out agonizingly behind him. He had never felt such formidable and overbearing murderousness, not even from an evil soul master. How can this be? Isn't he the God Realm's enforcer? Why does he look like an evil demon? The blood-red colors rippling from Tang Xan's body almost seemed viscous as his icy voice resonated through the air. Since you wish to die, then I will fulfill your wish. I am the God Realm's enforcer, and I have the authority to punish all gods who disobey the rules. I've wanted to kill you for a long time, so that my daughter can escape all that pain. The only thing that has stopped me is the fact that the God Realm cannot influence the human world. That's the reason why I haven't done so. Now that you're in the God Realm, you've presented yourself to me. I did want to give you a chance, but since you dare to shout and holler before me, I'll kill you where you stand. Tang Xan waved his right hand as he spoke. The grass and leaves on the ground suddenly magnified and transformed into thick vines that encircled Who are you? Every vine was blood-red, and there seemed to be veins pulsing on every surface, like they were enormous red snakes that had come alive. He wants to kill me. Who are you? Felt intense fear run through his heart. That murderousness was definitely not fake. It was the strongest one he had ever encountered. Who are you? Didn't want to fight Wutong's father, but he had to protect himself right now. Who are you? Glowed with a layer of gentle golden light, and the golden color immediately transformed into icy blue colors that stretched outwards. Extreme chills permeated the air, and the red vines immediately slowed when they touched the extreme cold. Who are you? Soared into the sky in a flash as he evaded the vines' entanglement, but his surroundings changed once more right at this moment. The sky suddenly became the ground, and the ground suddenly transformed into the sky as Who are you? Planted his head heavily into the ground while he was flying upwards. This was the first time Who are you? Had encountered something like this. He had just touched the ground when those blood-red vines wrapped themselves around him and immobilized him. Who are you? Ultimate ice godly power could slow these vines, but it couldn't truly affect her power. Small spikes began appearing on those vines once they wrapped themselves around him and started piercing him. Who are you? Body couldn't completely block those spikes despite his formidable physique. An intense piercing pain coursed through his body. But Who are you? Was a man who had been through endless pain and suffering, and he had experienced pain much stronger than this. Therefore, even though his body tensed up because of the acute pain, the pain actually allowed him to clear his mind. He had to live if he wanted to find Wutong. He couldn't die here, no matter what. An enormous figure appeared behind Who are you? Back. It was the Ice Bear King. A joyous sensation immediately radiated from the Ice Bear King. Bliss of the seven emotions. The blood-red vines that were wrapped tightly around Who are you? Froze before they started swaying faintly like they had been given life, and were dancing happily. Who are you? Felt the tension relax as he immediately used instant teleportation to escape the vine's iron grip. However, he didn't dare to fly upward. Tang Xan could actually reverse the heavens and the earth, and escaping from his grasp was far too difficult. An enormous red web descended from the sky at this moment and bore down on Who are you? Dense murderousness exploded through the air, and Who are you? Realized in fearful shock that he couldn't seem to evade the enormous web no matter what he did. The web seemed to become an entire space in that moment, and it was about to consume him. Who are you? Couldn't dodge it, so he could only fight it head on. Who are you? Took a deep breath as light sparkled in his eyes. I have to bear all the pain I need to so that I can see Wutong again. Enormous ice cones swiftly took shape with his body in the center and erupted in all directions as countless ice cones surged into the sky like giant pillars. Who are you? Himself was astonished. Has my star Anasong Mithras become so formidable after I've become a god? Circles of white light rippled from his body. Absolute zero. Who are you? Absolute zero could be considered a godly skill, and its most salient characteristic was that it amplified all of Who are you? Ice type abilities, which had extraordinary significance in battle. Those ice pillars immediately rose from the ground to more than 300 meters tall. The gigantic red web bore down and clashed with the ice cones. The ice cones were gradually crumbling, but it greatly stalled the web's descent and bought Who are you? Several moments of time. Who are you? Bolted backwards. He had never considered defeating Tang Xan because he was clear that that was entirely impossible. Therefore, he could only run, and he would escape before thinking about anything else. Tang Xan was the God Realm's enforcer, but he wasn't the only enforcer in the God Realm. Who are you? Had to escape Tang Xan's grasp before finding some other way to find his wife. Who are you? Raced backwards as he raised his speed as high as possible and detonated those ice pillars at the same time. The Ice Empress shadow appeared behind Who are you? Anger of the seven emotions. The ice explosion's force was immediately maximized because of the emotion of anger. The explosion resembled nature herself, heaving a deep sigh of searing fury mixed with countless icy explosions transformed into uncountable pieces of ice that danced through the air. Circles of light rippled from Who are you's body. Who are you? Didn't just use ice explosion along with the emotion of anger. He immediately used the snowy dance of ultimate ice and the Ice Bear King's blizzard afterwards. Who are you? Unleashed his domain control abilities to their highest possible standard. The entire forest seemed to become an icy blue world as the terrifyingly low temperatures because of absolute zero and the blizzard was so formidable that even Tang Xan, who was the God Realm's enforcer, paused in his tracks. A look of surprise appeared in his blood-red eyes. He muttered under his breath. He's just entered the God Realm, and he has already fused Rong Niambing's power of emotions so seamlessly with his own abilities. He's a very adaptable individual after all, and his potential is unleashed the more he's pressured. Who are you? Ran away hurriedly. He could feel that the murderousness became weaker when he unleashed blizzard, and he heaved a sigh of relief. Who are you? Had a feeling that he was controlling heaven and earth. Was this what it was like to be a god? Who are you? Surroundings gradually became illusory, but everything around him was a vast forest from beginning to end, like there was no end at all. Who are you? Was confident that he would have traversed even the great Stardow forest forest at his current maximum speed, but this forest he was in seemed endless. He released his divine sense, but all he could feel were endless trees and vegetation. Huro Yuao stopped only when he couldn't feel the murderousness from behind him anymore. He dropped to the ground, and when he turned around, he was still stuck in the vast forest, but his father-in-law's terrifying aura was no longer there. Huro Yuao's life was temporarily safe, but he could only laugh bitterly at his predicament. He had such a powerful and overbearing father-in-law, so how could he search for Tang Wutong? Furthermore, his father-in-law was the God Realm's enforcer. While he had just entered the God Realm, he was still unfamiliar with everything around him, and there was hardly anything he could do. What should I do next? He was in a completely unfamiliar place. Furthermore, he could be in danger at any moment. Huro Yuao had gone through so much trouble to become a god, but even now, he felt a threat of helplessness. Huro Yuao laughed bitterly as he walked forward. No matter what, he had to leave this forest before anything else. He didn't dare to fly above it, because that would expose him too easily. There seemed to be some mystical force within this forest, and not even his divine sense could reach places further away. Huro Yuao didn't know how long he had walked from the area before he emptied and grew spacious as a small lake appeared in front of him. Huro Yuao was momentarily stunned when he saw this lake, because he realized to his surprise that this lake was too similar to the Great Stardew Forest's Lake of Life. Wait. Huro Yuao's eyes flowed with astonishment, because he suddenly realized that there was a small courtyard by the lakeside. There were 3 wooden houses inside the courtyard, and they weren't very large. However, they were intricate and exquisite, and their location by the lakeside in a forest seemed especially scenic and poetic. There were houses, and that meant there were people. Huro Yuao hurriedly stepped towards those wooden houses, even though he didn't know which god stayed here. Asking someone about the god realm was better than trying to figure things out on his own. That was especially so because he had offended the enforcer. Huro Yuao raised his voice and asked as he came to the courtyard, "Hello, is anyone here?" Huro Yuao asked 3 times before the door to the wooden house in the middle opened, and someone walked out. This man had golden hair and a burly, muscular frame. He had mundane and unassuming facial features, and he looked a little more than 30. An indescribably old and ancient aura emanated from this man as he stood there, and he was like a towering and majestic mountain that would intimidate any onlooker. For some reason, Huro Yuao seemed to find this person a little familiar. He felt like he had just seen the White Tiger Duke. Huro Yuao's eyes were incredibly sharp, and he focused and realized to his surprise that this golden-haired man also had 2 pupils in each of his eyes. "Come in." The golden-haired man's voice was deep and thick, but it carried a tinge of clanging sounds. The courtyard door opened as Huro Yuao stepped in subconsciously. However, his eyes were fixated on the golden-haired man's face from the beginning to the end, and he seemed to get something in his heart, but he couldn't really confirm his theory. "He's here." Another voice could be heard in this moment. This voice was a little cold, but extremely touching and melodious. There was also tenderness mixed with the voice's coldness. Another person stepped out from the wooden hut. Flowing black hair draped behind her, and her simple black dress brought out her beauty and elegance. She seemed like she was around 28 or 29, and her body was very mature, while her features were gorgeous. Coldness radiated from her beautiful eyes, but her eyes were very gentle as she trained them on Huro Yuao. They even had a tinge of benevolence. "You must be Yuao." The black-haired lady smiled as she spoke. Huro Yuao nodded, but his eyes seemed a little lost. The lady turned and glanced at the golden-haired man as she giggled. "He must be stronger than you are. He's a tier 1 god. He's still my descendant," the golden-haired youth said proudly. Huro Yuao's eyes froze as he immediately confirmed his speculation. "You. Who are you?" The golden-haired youth stared at him with passionate, sparkling eyes. "My name is Mubai, and this is my wife, Zhuqing." Mubai? Zhuqing. Even though Huro Yuao already had his own speculations, he could still feel his blood stirring in his veins when he heard their names. Huro Yuao had just entered the god realm, but the enforcer was coming after his skin, and when he was blank and helpless, he suddenly met his ancestors. Yes, his ancestors. Back when Shrek Academy was still a small academy with a concept 10,000 years ago, they had only enrolled monsters, and not normal individuals. Back then, the generation of Shrek 7 monsters was born, and shook the entire continent. Only then was Shrek Academy born, and only then did the Tang Sect come into existence. The leader of that generation of Shrek 7 monsters was undoubtedly Tang Xan, who later became both the god of the sea and the Asura god. However, the other 6 individuals were equally outstanding. The person who was most senior in that generation of Shrek 7 monsters, the person that even Tang Xan had to call his elder brother, was called Mubai. People knew him as the evil eye white tiger, and he was the first of the white tiger Douluo. The white tiger was inherited by the Dai family, and the white tiger duke, Dai Hao, who was Huro Yuao's father, was one of them. This also meant that if this man was truly the evil eye white tiger, Mubai, then he was Huro Yuao's ancestor. Zhuqing was number 6 in that generation of Shrek's 7 monsters, and people knew her as the Netherworld spirit cat. The strongest individual with the most formidable individual fighting strength besides Tang Xan in that generation of Shrek's 7 monsters was undoubtedly Mubai. Legend held that Mubai had also become a god, and that he disappeared without a trace after having sons and daughters. Huro Yuao had undoubtedly confirmed this legend at this moment. Huro Yuao ran into his kin in his most difficult moment, and that feeling was just so wonderful. Huro Yuao subconsciously released his divine sense and stretched it over to Mubai and Zhuqing. Mubai frowned a little, but said nothing. Huro Yuao was brimming with emotions, but he couldn't proceed blindly. He would truly embarrass himself if he recognized the wrong ancestor, so he had to feel for himself. Inherited bloodlines wouldn't change through the passage of time, and Huro Yuao fell to his knees and kowtowed in the next moment. His voice was so excited that it trembled as he said, "Greetings, my 2 grand ancestors. I am Huro Yuao. You should be called Dai Yuao. Otherwise, how can you call me your ancestor?" Mubai chided. "Dai Yuao?" That name cracked into Huro Yuao's heart and momentarily stunned him. Yes, I should be called Dai Yuao, but can I really call myself that? Old memories flashed through his mind, about how his mother had brought him up through pain and suffering when he was young, and how she had passed away and eventually been buried in the end. Intense pain erupted from the bottom of his heart, and no matter what rationality told him, and that he couldn't offend his ancestors at a time like this, he still couldn't help but raise his head and retort, "No, my surname is Huro, not Dai. What did you say?" Mubai's facial hair flared, and an incredibly fearsome aura erupted from his body. Mubai was a tier 2 god, and Huro Yuao was a tier 1 god, but he was so stifled that he almost couldn't catch his breath. He felt like he was facing Tang Xan again. Huro Yuao gritted his teeth and held on painfully, but said nothing. However, there was only stubbornness in his eyes, and that was his answer. Mubai's eyes grew cold. "Are you not recognizing your ancestors?" Huro Yuao's expression also turned cold. He had made up his mind in those few moments. There were some things that could be changed, but some couldn't be changed even across eternity. That is not what I am doing. However, my surname can only follow my mother. My mother raised me through much pain and suffering since my birth. As long as there was some delicious food in the house, she would give it to me, and she quietly ate food that humans shouldn't be eating. I would be dead a long time ago without my mother. So what's the point of recognizing my ancestors if that were the case? I am capable of detaching myself from hate and vengeance, but my mother is no longer around when I have become powerful. So the only thing I can do for her is to continue living and pass down her surname. Therefore, my surname is Huro, and this surname will never change, not unless my mother comes back to life and tells me to change it herself. Huro Yuao struggled to speak in the beginning, but his own aura flourished increasingly as he spoke, and he stood up from the ground towards the end as he bore the brunt of Mubai's immense pressure. Huro Yuao didn't mince his words, and his attitude was decisive. Mubai said coldly, "I know what has happened to you. You have offended Tang Xan, and he will not give you a single chance without us. He might even kill you. If your surname is Huro, then you can scram. You're not part of the Dai family, and I will not help you at all. You will find yourself with nowhere to go in the god realm, and you will suffer Tang Xan's judgment." Huro Yuao's heart had turned cold. He laughed at himself mockingly, and he took 2 steps back before he went on his knees again and kowtowed toward Mubai and Zhuqing. Right when Mubai and Zhuqing thought he was about to change his mind, Huro Yuao suddenly stood up straight as he turned and stepped out of the courtyard. Huro Yuao didn't hesitate at all, and neither did he dally. He was willing to be an enemy to the whole world rather than change his filial piety and love for his mother. "Yuao." A voice suddenly rang out from behind him. This voice was filled with passion and sniffles, and it was also filled with endless love and warmth. Huro Yuao's entire body shook when he heard this voice. His eyes were overcome with fear, and he felt like he had been immobilized as he just stood there, motionless. He was still in a daze as he slowly turned around, and his body was quivering continuously despite his determined attitude. Thanks so much for watching this video. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Also leave a comment down below with suggestions on what novels to read.